Hi, everybody. It's Steph Mishuk. Care and feeding of crazy, crooked clients. This is the subject of this video blog. So I think you can understand what a crazy and a crooked client might be. They could be crazy and crooked. They could be crazy and not crooked, but it could just be crooked, or they can just be not very experienced with regards to app and web design development. So it comes down to the way that you stage the relationship between you and your client. That will prevent a lot of problems. So when you first meet your client, you have to be clear, calm, and transparent about how the process is going to go. And you have to get things down on paper with your contract. The contract is huge. And by having the contract and the way you position it to your client, who could be a great client, but they could also be crazy crooked as well. The way you position the contract, where you each have a signed copy, is that you say this will prevent any disputes, this will help prevent disputes, and it will be clear about each of our responsibilities in this transaction. That's a very reasonable position. It's a transparent position. Any reasonable person will say, okay, that's cool, that makes sense. We want to make sure that everybody understands where we're going in this situation. So you should indicate in that contract how you're going to get paid. I talked about the 33% split. How many revisions there should be. There should be 3 revisions after you deliver the first draft. How, timeliness in terms of payment, and so on and so forth. I think I'll do another blog on my top 5 clauses that I would include in a contract. So when you're dealing with the crazy clients, it's about setting up the situation, setting up the relationship up front so you understand where you are going. Because let me give you an example of a crooked client. A crooked client might have you do a bunch of work back and forth. We'll talk about a website, for instance. It could be a web app, could be an app, could be whatever. They'll have you come back and forth. They'll give you specs and this and that, and they have paid you maybe half up front. And then when you're like 95% of the work is done, then they'll go, well, I'm not quite sure if I like this, but how about you just give me what you got and we'll call it even though you've done 95% of the work and you only got paid half, right? Those type of things. Or you might have a client just immature. I've seen a lot of times in my experience as a developer, clients who don't know what they're doing, and there are a lot, they tend to wrongly assume about what is hard to do versus what is not hard to do. So for instance, they may find that implementing a cinematograph within a website is like a huge amount of work, whereas setting up an authentication system is like nothing. Like, well, come on, login system, it's simple, everybody does it. But they'll think that the cinematograph is like, oh my God, wow, that's amazing, that's so, so a lot of times they have no appreciation about how long something can take to do. It's deceptive. If you've been learning web development recently or web design, you can see, yourself, that it could take a long time just to tweak a layout, just to get it right, or to get a feature going properly. It could take a lot longer than you would think, right? Because there's all these little things that come up that slow down the whole process. So dealing with crooked or crazy clients, having strict parameters up front, on paper, on contract, is a good preventative measure. Also using the payment schedule, the 33 payment schedule, as I discussed before, plays a role in terms of allowing you to control the situation. People tend to act more seriously when they're seriously invested in a project. So that means if you, after you deliver the first draft where you've gotten 66% of the money, they're much more likely to, the clients are, to respect the process because they know that they've put nearly 2/3 of the money into this project. Whereas if you, heaven forbid, don't take any money up front, which is the silliest thing you could possibly do, then they won't take you too seriously because they don't have anything invested, right? So that's basically the solution. Crooked, crazy clients. In time, you also have to learn to identify them. And you're going to get a feel for that pretty early on. So And sometimes the crookedness is not so obvious. Like, for instance, you might have a client who keeps on trying to bleed you of your time. Well, I don't like this color of green. Okay, we have a slightly different color of green. Okay, I like that color of green, but you know what? Then I think that button should be changed. And so you can have these continuous change requests. And that could be more of an issue of just inexperience in terms of the client. So you have to be upfront with that in terms of how many change requests do they get with this particular job, because they could go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. There's a point where you have to say, listen, that's it. I've done my 3 revisions. We're done. Finally, another thing I would do to deal with crooked, crazy clients is have it clear in the initial contract that you own the code, you own everything until you get final payment, and they sign off on that. That's a clause you should have in every contract. I would recommend. This way, they can't say, give me the work, which you've done so far. I've only paid you half, but you've done 95% of the work. I wanted my 16-year-old kid is going to add little bits on the side, or have an intern who's going to come work for free. So give me the work. So remember that. Don't give up the code. Don't give them the site. Don't give them the app until they pay you in full, right? So there you go. That's it for crazy, crooked clients. Care and feeding of. Ciao.